Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to share a story that proves the strongest hearts are often hidden behind the quietest smiles, and sometimes the person everyone overlooks becomes the greatest blessing in someone else's life. When people looked at Daniel, they saw a hardworking single father who never complained. Every morning before sunrise, he packed lunches for his 8-year-old daughter Lily, braided her hair after watching countless online tutorials, made breakfast, and somehow still managed to get to work before anyone else. His wife had passed away 4 years earlier after a long illness, leaving Daniel to learn how to be both father and mother overnight. Life wasn't easy, but Daniel refused to let bitterness become part of his daughter's childhood. Every evening they ate dinner together, shared stories about their day, and ended the night reading one chapter from Lily's favorite books. Their apartment wasn't fancy, their car was old enough to squeak every time it turned a corner, and money was always tight. But laughter filled every room they lived in. At work, however, Daniel had become something of a mystery. His co-workers admired him but constantly worried that he spent too much time alone. Every invitation to blind dates, parties, or social gatherings was politely declined. "I'm already where I need to be," he would always answer with a grateful smile. But they believed he was simply afraid of opening his heart again. So one Friday afternoon, the office decided to take matters into their own hands. They organized what they called a charity banquet for local families, volunteers, and employees. Daniel agreed to attend only because Lily loved community events. Unknown to him, several co-workers had another plan. There was a volunteer named Emma. Everyone knew Emma. Not because she was famous. Not because she was loud. But because people never stopped whispering whenever she entered a room. Years earlier, Emma had survived a terrible house fire while rescuing 2 elderly neighbors trapped inside. The neighbors survived. Emma barely did. The fire left deep scars across one side of her face, neck, and arm. Although doctors saved her life, strangers rarely looked beyond her appearance. Children sometimes stared. Adults looked away. Others whispered cruel things they assumed she couldn't hear. She heard every word. Over time, Emma stopped trying to explain herself. Instead, she volunteered at shelters, organized food drives, and spent weekends reading to children whose parents couldn't visit them in hospitals. She carried kindness wherever she went, even though the world rarely returned it. Daniel's co-workers thought introducing Emma to Daniel would make for an amusing social experiment. Some secretly believed Daniel would politely reject her. Others expected awkward silence. A few even joked that at least both of them were damaged. None of them realized Lily was listening. When Daniel and Lily arrived at the banquet hall, warm lights filled the room. Volunteers laughed, children played games, and soft music drifted through the air. After dinner, one coworker approached Daniel. "We'd like you to meet someone." Daniel smiled politely. "Of course." Emma stood near the dessert table arranging cupcakes for the children. She wore a simple blue dress and kept her hair partly covering the scars that stretched across her cheek. She looked nervous the moment she realized everyone was watching. Daniel walked toward her. Emma lowered her eyes. "Hello," she whispered. "I'm Emma." Daniel extended his hand immediately. "I'm Daniel." His smile never changed. Neither did his eyes. He looked directly at her, not around her. For the first time that evening, Emma looked surprised. They talked about books. About volunteering. About Lily's love of painting. About nothing extraordinary. Yet somehow everything felt genuine. Across the room, coworkers exchanged confused looks. One whispered, "Maybe he hasn't noticed." Another laughed quietly. Then one of them spoke loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "So Daniel, what do you think?" The room became strangely quiet. Daniel looked around, sensing something wasn't right. What do you mean? Another coworker grinned. You know, about your surprise date. Emma immediately stepped back. Her face turned pale. She had experienced this before. Being treated like someone's punishment. Someone's joke. She quietly picked up her purse. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should go. Before she could walk away, Daniel gently called her name. Emma. She stopped. Then Daniel turned toward everyone else. I have a question. Nobody answered. If this was supposed to embarrass someone. He paused. I think you've embarrassed yourselves. The room fell completely silent. Daniel continued. You introduced me to someone who spends her free time helping strangers. He looked toward Emma. Someone brave enough to risk her own life to save other people. Then he faced his coworkers again. And somehow you expected me to see her as less valuable because of scars she earned saving lives? No one moved. No one even breathed loudly. Daniel slowly walked over to Emma. I don't see scars. He smiled warmly. I see proof that courage has a face. Emma's eyes immediately filled with tears. Daniel wasn't finished. You know what my daughter asks every night? Everyone remained silent. She asks whether good people still exist. He looked toward Lily, who stood proudly nearby. I'd rather introduce her to someone like Emma than to people who judge others before learning their story. Several guests lowered their heads. One woman quietly wiped tears from her eyes. The banquet suddenly felt different. Not because anyone had argued. But because truth has a way of silencing cruelty. Little Lily walked over holding 2 cupcakes. She handed one to Emma. My daddy says heroes are people who help others even when they're scared. Emma struggled to answer. I heard you saved people. Emma nodded softly. Lily smiled. I think you're beautiful. There wasn't a dry eye left in the room. Even the people who had laughed earlier couldn't hide their shame. One coworker quietly walked toward Emma. I'm sorry. Another followed. So am I. Within minutes, several people apologized sincerely. Not because Daniel embarrassed them. Because they suddenly saw what they had ignored for years. The scars had never been the problem. Their assumptions had. The evening continued, but the atmosphere had completely changed. People who had never spoken to Emma before now sat beside her. They asked about her volunteer work. They listened to her stories. They laughed together. Not out of pity. Out of genuine respect. As the event ended, Daniel walked Emma to her car. I hope today didn't ruin your evening. Emma smiled. It actually restored something I thought I'd lost. What was that? Faith. Daniel looked confused. In people. Weeks passed. Daniel and Emma continued talking. Not because anyone arranged it. Because they enjoyed each other's company. Sometimes they met at the park while Lily played. Sometimes they volunteered together at food banks. Sometimes they simply drank coffee while talking about life. Neither of them rushed anything. Both understood pain. Both respected healing. Months later, Lily asked Daniel a question. Dad? Yes? When Emma smiles. Daniel looked over. Emma was helping children decorate cookies. What about it? I think Mom would like her. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I think she would too. 1 year later, the same banquet was held again. Only this time things looked very different. Emma wasn't standing alone. She stood beside Daniel and Lily. The three of them welcomed every guest personally. One of Daniel's co-workers approached nervously. "I owe both of you another apology." Daniel smiled. "You already gave one." "I know. But I never understood what you taught us." Emma asked gently. "What was that?" The co-worker looked around the crowded room. "We spent years judging faces. You judged hearts." Daniel shook his head. "No. I simply gave someone the same respect every human being deserves." That sentence spread through the room faster than any speech could have. Several volunteers later admitted they had started questioning how often they judged strangers without realizing it. Others became volunteers themselves after hearing Emma's story. One family even organized fundraising events for burn survivors. A single moment of kindness had created countless others. Years later, Lily wrote an essay at school titled, "The Most Beautiful Person I Know." Her teacher expected it to be about a celebrity. Or maybe her father. Instead, she wrote about Emma. She described how beauty wasn't something you saw with your eyes. It was something you discovered through kindness, courage, and compassion. Her essay won first place across the entire district. When reporters asked where she learned such wisdom at such a young age, Lily smiled. "My dad taught me that scars don't tell you what someone lost. They tell you what they survived. And Emma taught me that surviving with kindness is the bravest thing anyone can do." Sometimes people believe life changes through grand speeches or dramatic moments. But often it changes because one person chooses compassion when everyone else chooses judgment. One handshake. One conversation. One act of respect. That's all it takes to remind the world what humanity is supposed to look like. If this story touched your heart, remember this the next time you meet someone who looks different, sounds different, or carries invisible battles you know nothing about. You never truly know someone's story until you choose to listen instead of judge. Kindness costs nothing, but to the person receiving it, it can mean absolutely everything. Thank you so much for watching. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes kindness still has the power to change lives. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never underestimate the impact of treating every person with dignity and respect.